So that way I've got that done.
And I'm just going to wait a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
Hi, everybody. Say hi in the chat if you'd like. Hi, good afternoon, Sherry. Hi, Becky, welcome. Thanks, Carol. I'll try to insert some really bad humor in here today. So I will attempt to make a pandemic funny. So get right on that.
You want to go ahead and get started with the welcome and stuff? Is that okay if I go? All right, we're going to go ahead and get started because we want to take in every minute we have on this webinar. So I want to welcome you to our June program. My name is Amy Snell Canterbury, and I am our programs chair for AFP Texas Coastal Bend. We're excited to be able to offer this program to both AFP members and non-members today for free. And we know that you're going to take away some information that you can use to help you to continue to navigate this unusual time. We are elated to have donor relations guru Lynne Wester here with us. She's going to share some invaluable strategies and insights that will help you continue your fundraising journey through COVID-19. Many of you have had the opportunity to hear her in person at our past events and follow her on social media, but if you haven't, now's the time. And I want to share a little background on her before we get started. Lynne believes that donor relations is the key to unlocking fundraising success, and that organizations must be as dedicated to the donor experience, or DX, as they are to the ask itself. Sometimes referred to as the Olivia Pope of fundraising, Lynne helps organizations when they need it the most, when crisis or opportunity arrive. Lynne and her teammates at the Donor Relations Guru Group partner with nonprofits large and small on a variety of initiatives, from developing sound strategy and vision to utilizing technology and creating meaningful donor engagement, all designed to positively affect the fundraising bottom line. Her guidance has led her clients to be recognized on the national stage for fundraising innovation, creative communication, and groundbreaking donor relations work. Lynne is one of the most sought-after fundraising speakers in the world. Speaking is her passion, and she loves sharing her knowledge with others. She's presented at regional conferences of 40, large international conferences of over 4,000, and everywhere in between. Lynne created the DRG website to be used as a unique industry tool filled with resources, samples, and thought leadership on donor relations and fundraising. She is regularly featured in publications such as the Washington Post, Chronicle of Philanthropy, and Case Currents, and has authored 3 books of her own on a myriad of industry topics. Lynne received her BA from the University of South Carolina, holds a master's in strategic fundraising and philanthropy from Bay Path University, and proudly sports a doctorate from the Disney Institute. Before we get started, I want to let you know that we'll take as many of your questions as possible toward the end of the program. And we're also recording this webinar, and we'll send it to you along with Lynne's contact information and social media links after the event. And so I want to thank you again for joining us, and thank you in advance, Lynne, for being here today and for sharing your wisdom, and especially in the way you deliver it, because you're so relatable that I know there's going to be some laughs today. So let's get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Amy. I'm so excited to be here with you all again, even though I'm in virtual land this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen and we're going to walk through the slides together. You'll get a copy of these slides with the recording. And if at any time you have questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A, and we'll go from there. If you knew where you were going to be 4 months ago, let's see, it's June 17th. The last flight I took was on March 13th, so April, May, June, so 3 months ago. And boy, have our lives changed in many ways, both for the challenging and also for the. We're going to talk about what it's like to communicate with your donors during these uncertain times. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what's going on with your nonprofit. I kind of feel like I've been a fan of Survivor for 20 years, ever since it's been. I feel like I'm living real life Survivor, except I'm not on a deserted island full of tropical fruit. I've been drinking a lot of tropical fruit with my alcohol though, so maybe. But I feel like it's outwit, outplay, outlast. And one of the things that is in our new reality is we're working during a pandemic. And sometimes that provides us with challenges, and it also provides us with opportunities. So, you know, when times get tough and when we're thinking about the dynamics of our work, I want you to think about how we can outwit, outplay, and outlast. And one of the things we have to do is become really comfortable with uncertainty. It seems that every 2 weeks the world changes, but our donors, those generous people, are here now more than ever. I was just reading a New York Times article before I got on this webinar about that in the last 2 weeks, donations to causes supporting Black Lives Matter movement have totaled over $200 million, and most of those gifts are under $50. So the world and America, we are known to be charitable during a crisis, and so we as nonprofits need to be there as stabilizing forces during those times. So if you haven't already in the past 3 months, and if you haven't, I don't know why, you need to be doing personal and individual outreach to each of your donors, making sure that you're near, dear, and clear. So expressing to them and having them understand where your organization is in the situation, focusing on their health and well-being, focusing on the community and what the community needs are, and certainly all while doing this with a depth and breadth of empathy and compassion, and understanding that, you know, you may be the only person they talk to as a donor. You may be the only contact they make that day outside of their family. So we serve a vital role with a lot of our donors in terms of communication. So now is not the time to be paralyzed. It's not the time to go silent and not communicate with your donors. Now is the time to communicate and to take a step toward understanding them. We also have to understand the role that philanthropy and fundraising takes with our donors. So we need to start accepting some realities around fundraising, and understanding that people give to your cause, right? And for those of you who've heard me talk before, but we lose most of them after their first gift. And good fundraisers are great listeners. We venture to make connections with our donors. We want them to feel ingrained in our organization, and they're needed and they're valued, and that we in turn owe them a debt of gratitude and impact. So for every donor that gives, we owe them thanks, and we also owe them the right to tell them what their money is doing. So even though times are tough, donors are being generous. They're being generous to the causes that mean the most to them, and the causes that are out there stabilizing the community, doing good in the community. So it's our opportunity to then relate to those donors and help them be as generous as they can be. But we're also working in a new way. So for those of you who are on Zoom overload or virtual meeting overload, I understand yesterday I did 10 hours of Zoom. and then I laid down and like crawled into a ball. And there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue. And now what used to be a pop in the hallway or a casual conversation is a Zoom meeting. And so if you're going to set up your meetings internally, you want to make sure that it's not just an hour spent in discussion, but that there's an agenda, there's goals and outcomes you're trying to reach. Everybody has a role in the meeting, and that everyone leaves with an action item or a takeaway. So making sure you're being very good about using people's time. Also, you may want to, at your organization, form a Zoomless day. So every week I have my assistant schedule an entire day where I'm not on camera. I don't have to put on, hair and makeup. I don't have to, get out of the shorts and t-shirts. I would say yoga pants, but they're too hot in Texas. They're too hot. But so you really want to think about how you're building in this new culture of work with you. The thing that we're missing in our virtual environment is overhearing other people, water cooler talk. And sometimes we may feel like we're not communicating, that we're more siloed than we used to be, even at small organizations. But there are ways to overcome that. There are ways to think through that. So we really do want to think about how we adapt to the new way that we work. So one of the things I want you to think about is when you get communications, when you receive them internally, you always want to assume positive intent. A lot gets lost in text and those online conversations. You want your colleagues to overshare what they're thinking. So rather than having something go unsaid, you really want things to go said all of the time. So encourage your colleagues to share as much detail as possible. One of the things I've been doing is after I get off the phone or get off Zoom, I've been having follow-up emails. So what I heard you say is, here's the clarification on the action items, things like that, so that does not get lost in the sauce, and that people feel like, okay, there's something that's coming out of this conversation, rather than just it kind of getting lost in the ether there. So, and then you want to always tie your goals and the communications back to a metric, whether it's donor retention, whether it's a fundraising goal, whether it's moving forward on a project, but you want to be able to move forward in those efforts. So again, something for you to think about there, because it's a lot of people are thriving in working in a different location, and some people are struggling, and everybody's allowed to have, their issue or their kind of outlook on working remotely. I don't think that we're going to stop working remotely anytime soon. So, but for those of us that love that human attention, it can be quite difficult. So it's something for us to adapt to. One of the things that I want you to get comfortable with at your organization that many of you are still struggling with is getting comfortable questioning the status quo. So really thinking about how the hard questions are and how they're going to affect your organization and what that looks like. So everything from, well, our events have been eliminated, what do we do now? How do we take on new initiatives? What do you keep and what do you get rid of? Some of the discussions we've had at organizations have been able to unburden them from kind of long held traditions that people aren't comfortable with, or traditions that may not make as much sense, or things that maybe a board member foisted on us that now we can unburden ourselves from. But we really need to reconsider how we engage with our donors and what that looks like. And so I think it's a really good opportunity for us to really question everything we do with our audiences, take a step back and look at the larger picture and what that means for us as nonprofit organizations. I will always tell you, and it's always important to me, that data leads the way in your decision making. So always leading the way with data, making the decisions based on fact and not opinion. So again, making sure that people understand why it is we do what we're doing and what we're doing, and that those decisions are based on facts and not just conjecture or what one person thinks. So I want to show you a couple of communications I've been receiving, as many of you have, during COVID times. I've received the gamut of communications, both good, bad, and otherwise in between. And I wanted to show you some examples of appropriate tone, excellent communication and language, and also give you an opportunity to say, here's what's working for us, here's what's not working for us. And so just something to think about for you and your organization. So a lot of organizations are really nailing it right now, but Gonzaga University has been doing just such a fantastic start. Their tone is wonderful. Their empathy in their communications is lovely. And I just really find just a great communication. They've done it from the start of the pandemic, and they've moved through even now with Black Lives Matter and other things that are important for them to note. And so they always start with gratitude. And I love, because they're not afraid of emotion. So one of the things I want you to think about is, are your communications filled with emotion? Are they moving? Do they allow your donors to have feelings? You know, so I just really love this. I try not to read to you because I know you can all read, but I love we hope that you find comfort in knowing that the action you took to support Gonzaga is helping during a uniquely difficult time. You are a blessing for which our community is truly grateful. Thank you. Again, you know, just really great text. And then you receive some of them that are like this. So I've hidden the organization that this came from. It's a university, same as Gonzaga. But boy, did they, excuse me, boy, did they miss the kind of opportunity to be empathetic. You know, it says, the challenge that the COVID-19 pandemic creates has a quality that is discordant with many aspects of how our community functions. It's not our only challenge, but it's certainly one of the salient challenges of our time. It's up to us as a community to address it. And then the university president goes on to talk about himself. And so we want our communications to be about the donor. We want them to be full of empathy, and we want them to be relevant to the audience as well, not just demonstrative of, hey, you know, here's what's happening. And so I really want you to think about how you can change your communications, making them more human, making them more relevant, not shying away from vulnerability, and not shying away from an opportunity to talk about fundraising, to talk about emotion, because we know that emotion is 90% of fundraising and ration is 10%. So lean into that emotion there. Video. So if you haven't already embraced video at your organization, there is no better time than a pandemic when everyone is home. And so I really want to encourage you to embrace video as much as possible, to really use it to, you know, speak with your donors and embrace them, because there's only so much that can be said in text, and video is just so much more powerful than text alone. So I really want you to think about that. I am not from Spokane, but Whitworth University is one of my favorite clients, and Gonzaga as well. And I go to Spokane a ton. So great question, Becky. No, not from Spokane, but I love Spokane. So they do such a great job. So I want you to think about incorporating video into your communications. Nothing says more than video to your donors. So I really want you to really lean in to using video, exploring it for your organization. And again, it doesn't have to be high production. You know, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Most video can be shot on an iPhone, on a GoPro, something very simple, something very down to earth. You can totally do that and still have a great outcome. Yes, there will be a copy of this presentation. You'll get a copy of it with the recording. Yep, so no worries, good question. The other thing I want you to think about is when you communicate, the photos that you send out during your communications are very important. So this is from World Central Kitchen. I have been donating to them anytime I get some spare money during the pandemic. I have been giving them as much spare money as I can. I think they do a great job of feeding folks. They do a great job of employing chefs that are out of work during these times. And so they do also a great job of reporting back what they've done with my funding. So that being said, you can see here in their photos, people are appropriately social distanced. They're wearing PPE again, and they talk about the impact of the community. They're showing relevant photos here. So again, you want to think about that as well. The other thing you want to think about is communicating to your nonprofit audience that things are going to be a little bit different. So again, setting expectations for people, I think, is really important. So this is from UT San Antonio. My friend Carl Miller runs the fundraising department there, and they sent out an email to their supporters saying, we want to let you know that because we're not going into the office, things may take longer than normal. And, you know, we want you to know that we appreciate every donation, but that, so, you know, what you want to do is set those expectations and be able to communicate them to your donors. You don't want to get too kind of in the weeds or in the details about how your work is done. But you want to think about how you can communicate those changes that are happening to your organization during these times. So again, just another great development-focused communication. So we talked about images before. I received both of these images on the same day. I received both these images in March, early on. And one of them was sent from the Red Cross, one was sent from World Central Kitchen. And one was done in a socially responsible way, and one did not have socially responsible. So one was advertising their giving day, one was in an impact report. But as you can see, neither of the people in the upper left-hand corner are wearing masks. I don't know why she has on dish gloves, but those are not PPE. I mean, I guess they could be if you needed them to be in a pinch. But anyway, it's just not a responsible way to show photography from pre-COVID times, unless you have to spell out this photo was taken, you know, pre-COVID. And if you have to do that, it kind of loses all of its kind of power. Photography does. So it's kind of like if you have to explain the joke, it isn't really funny. So I want to encourage you to be careful what photography you're sharing. You know, a lot of you have beautiful group photography that you used before where people have their hands around each other or might be high-fiving. now's not the time to use that. So your images matter, and the details on those images matter as well. So, you know, I just want you to think about that in terms of what that means for your organization and your communications as well. All of the details have to be thought about, not just some of the details. So again, you know, things you want to think about for your communications in a post-COVID, or I guess we're not post-COVID. Texas is leading the country in cases right now. We're cranking them out. So we still have a long way to go here. For those of you wondering what fundraising is going to look like, I think this is a great example of what we're experiencing now, what we can experience in the future. And I've also put the link to this chart and to the accompanying article for you there in the comments. But I think right now we've seen two different bumps. So we went through a bump of fundraising for COVID relief, PPE, food for people. Now we're going through another bump with Black Lives Matter. So we're still in the bump phase kind of our pandemic. And the slump will probably be starting, we'll probably start in September and October as unemployment continues, as the economy continues to decline, and or as we see round one of cases continue to get worse and worse. I think we're going to see that continue to happen. So the slump is going to be long. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a lot longer than people expect it to be economically. Now, what does that mean for your organization? Well, the top 1%, you know, your big donors, they're not really dramatically affected by this. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say, but they're not devastated by the economy the way your donors of, you know, $100 are. Your donors who are giving you tens of thousands of dollars aren't as dramatically affected as those who are. So we still are going to have people giving. People are still giving at record levels right now. But again, we want to think about what that looks like moving forward, and what that means for your organization. How are you going to plan through the dip? How are you going to plan around the timing on your organization? And what will your communications look like moving forward? So again, something for you to think about as you move through the organization, you know, the time with your organization. So just again, something to think about there for you and your organization. And then we will see a resurgence. We always do. We always recover. People want to be generous. Again, we always come back, and that will be the surge, and that will be led by mostly large donors. So those donors with the big gifts come back first, because again, they weren't as damaged in the beginning. This is kind of tracking the giving during the last, I think this is 40 years of giving here. And what's really interesting about this is the gray shaded areas are downturns in the economy. So you can see that during the downturns, you can see the dip, and the most recent one was the Great Recession that you can see there in 2008, 2009. But we've climbed up a lot since then. We've currently, you know, kind of overcome a lot of that. But all that to say is we do bounce back, but it could be, again, a long road to that recovery, depending on, you know, what it looks like, but we do always bounce back. So that being said, what does that mean for your organization? What does it mean in terms of, you know, moving forward? So just something to think about. Here is your survival kit. So if we're going to play Survivor, here's your survival kit in terms of how we deal with a downturn in the economy, moving forward, things like that. The first thing to do with all of your donors, if you haven't already, is address the situation. but you don't want to dwell on the situation. So we're not going to talk for months about how our events have been canceled. Woe is us. Everybody's facing similar problems. I like to say that we're all in the same storm. We're just not all in the same boat. So sometimes that helps give people some perspective on their worldview. But that to say, we want to be a place of positivity. We are the people that do good. We are the positivity folks. So again, we want to, as much as possible, show what good is coming out of this, what is happening for the better. You know, any of those things that we can do to show the good, whether it's your organization out in the community, whether it's people donating PPE, you know, all of those kinds of things. How do we show the good in the community? And we want to show the things that are happening, not the things we're missing out on. So we don't want to be all doom and gloom. We want to show, hey, here's what is happening. Here's what is going well. Here's, you know, kind of what we're doing to be on the positive side of all of this. So again, keeping that eye toward the future, we don't want to, however, say things like when we get back to normal or when this is over, because we have to get comfortable that this is going to last a lot longer than we want it to, and that there is no such thing as getting back to normal. That's just not going to exist for us in the future. So just something to keep in the back of your mind as well. We want to increase our personal outreach. So if you aren't already, inviting people to Zoom calls, inviting people to virtual meetings, making sure you're reaching out, you know, really thinking about how you can reach out to people and be more present than ever. Most of my folks are reporting they're getting more visits than ever. They are having greater interactions with people, and people are much more receptive than they used to be to speaking with nonprofits, speaking with professionals. So lean into reaching out and that personal outreach. So that's really something to think about for you as well. You want to lean into digital resources as well. So again, how can you embrace video? How can you embrace, you know, digital talks? You know, just, you got to get comfortable with the fact that this is the new normal, and this is kind of how this is going. So again, this is our current, right? And so you want to think about that. So, and then you want to focus, if you had to ask me what group of donors to focus on, I would tell you absolutely your loyal donors. The people who got you here are the people that are going to get you there in the future. So you want to really focus on those donors, how you can embrace them, what you can do to steady them, and to make sure that they know how important they are to you. So not just your big donors, but your loyal donors as well. Those folks are really important to you. And so, yep, those are kind of people to focus on. You also want to do a great job in your reporting. So I just gave you some examples of some organizations that I give to, and kind of what they've sent to me in terms of reporting that has worked really well. And so I just thought, you know, a lot of people are showing kind of the before and after that's really powerful, that you could do there. So this is from the Trevor Project. They help LGBTQ youth. I really enjoy their reporting. This is from an organization that provides meals to those who otherwise can't afford it. And what I like about this is they show the before and then the now. So before the pandemic, they served 490 lunches a day. Now they serve 1,624. So you can actually feel the increase, right, in numbers before and after the pandemic. Again, just really a great way to demonstrate that impact and to make the donor feel that they are they're a part of the solution to the problem. So again, just fantastic way to do that impact reporting, because a lot of us were in a hurry to raise money, but we weren't in a hurry to report back on that money. So we have to do just as ardent of reporting back on the money than we did taking the money. So I just really want you to be thoughtful about that and what that means for you and your organization. So how you report back on that money will tell your donors whether or not they want to stay with your organization. So everybody's like, well, all of this challenge came, out of, all of this, struggle. What good has come out of this? Well, I can tell you that some good has come out of this pandemic in terms of our organizations and how we act, and what that means for, all kinds of people and the people that we benefit. So I wanted to give you a little bit of the good stuff, to steal a phrase from a news reporter that I follow. There are good things happening. There are good things coming out of the pandemic. Most nonprofits have been able to be way more creative than they ever would have been before this, in terms of they don't have a lot of resources, so we're getting really nimble and really creative with our platforms, with our skill sets, with the way we use technology. Our leadership is being more nimble now than ever, meaning they're open more to the new way of doing things, to just all kinds of, really moving forward in a more modern way. A lot of us have learned new skill sets. Amy and I were talking, I'm like, I've now, unfortunately or fortunately, become an expert in the Zoom and the, all the new technologies. I think people are giving each other a lot more grace than they ever did before. So if your internet connection cuts off, if the world isn't ideal, if somebody makes a mistake, people are like, it's okay, because we realize in the large scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. In addition to that, we've learned what really matters: the health of ourselves, our family, those people that matter the most to us. I think that's really important. And we might be physically far apart, but socially, I think a lot of us have grown closer than ever. I have a weekly happy hour with my close friends, and that wasn't happening before the pandemic. And then finally, as a nonprofit, we need people, we need generosity, and then gratitude wins the day. So as an organization, you can do that. So here's your roadmap for how you work during a pandemic. Some simple keys to success. Embrace the new reality, or at least stop fighting it. I think for most people, this is one of the hardest things to do. A lot of us are planners. We like to have things thought out and planned and everything laid out. And right now, every 2 weeks, something changes, and we're talking about major things that change. And so, get comfortable. And so I'm asking my organizations to plan in 2-week increments. You can't do a strategic plan for 2021 because we don't know what it's going to look like. We can plan in 2-week increments, though. We can learn to work in a new way, questioning the status quo at every turn. We can focus on the top of our donors and also our loyal donors. We sometimes have to make forced choices. And so follow-up is really important. It can help us get rid of eliminating our failing programs, events that weren't working, things that weren't, you know, relevant to us. And then we get to embrace the good stuff and be resourceful. So we have about 15 minutes left, and I want to dig into what you want to know. So this is content that I've come up with. I've been doing a COVID webinar series. I've been trying to help people throughout all of this, but it's your turn. So we have a Q&A box. There's also a chat box, but the Q&A box is better for questions because I can monitor that better than I can monitor the chat. What kinds of questions do you have? And it, you know, it could be about anything. You know, fundraising, please. Although, you know, these days all bets are off in terms of anything. So what do you want to know? What can we work on together? What are some of the questions facing you and your organization right now? Nobody's typing anything. Do you have questions about your events? Do you have questions about your communications? Here we go. All right. Carol says, we have postponed events hoping to reschedule for September. Not sure if that will happen. Probably not, Carol. And so I am recommending that we don't have events in person, gatherings of more than 10 people until 2021 or until we find a vaccine and a virus. We're being very cautious about that right now. I've been in contact with the donors. Should we refund the money? So the first thing I would do if I were in contact with the donors is, of course, thank them for their support, for their interest in the event. And then the second thing I would do, Carol, is ask them if they'd like to convert their donations, their sponsorships, their ticket purchases into straight donations. We've had a lot of success with that. Donors really want to give and help your organization. So they were just coming to the event as a way to help you. So keeping your mind and your eye open to that, people really do want to help. So you can ask them if they'd like to convert their donation to their event ticket to a donation. And then if they say no, then you can say, well, you know, we could keep your gift until next year's event. But right now, because you don't want to play the we're going to postpone, and then just keep postponing game. It's better to just cancel the event and say, we're not going to have an event until 2021. So hopefully that is helpful to you. But I have not had an issue with donors who, when you say, you know, we'd really like to turn your ticket price into a donation, most of them are happy to do it. So that might be something you want to try at your organization. Great question. Great question. All right, I'm at a new organization and they brought me on to reach out to a larger community. Awesome. How in these times would you approach new corporations? So same exact way I would approach them in old times, pre-COVID times. I think reaching out with an email, setting up a chance to talk either on phone or sorry, brain fart, setting up a phone call or a Zoom call to talk with them. We've had donors who are coming in to organizations, and so now's still a time to reach out. You don't stop your work. And so I would approach new corporations by saying, we'd like to talk to you about our mission. We'd like to talk to you about funding opportunities we have, and here's what we've been doing for the community. So yeah, I would not stop. That is great. You've been brought in to build relationships. Keep on it. Patty says, should organizations charge a ticket price for their virtual events? It's a great question, Patty. What a lot of my organizations are doing for virtual events is they're either offering the opportunity to tip, like, hey, I've seen this performance, I'm going to do a virtual tip jar, or they scroll their giving site at the bottom of the virtual event. Not a lot of people are charging necessarily ticket prices, but donors who attend the events are finding value and so therefore are making donations. So it's one way for you to serve a more inclusive community, but also still have people support you monetarily. Yeah, great. What are some options for virtual fundraising? They're limitless. That's a great question. So I've seen everything from email campaigns to crowdfunding efforts to telethons, like old school broadcast telethons on Facebook Live. I've seen lots of different ways to fundraise, but the best way to fundraise virtually is a direct appeal. So a direct appeal to the donor. Hi, this is Lynn. Here are our current needs. We need your help. So don't ever overlook a direct appeal for some sort of gimmick or attempt at cutesy, cutesy tootsy things. You don't need an event to fundraise. And I think, thank goodness, that's one of the things people are figuring out during the pandemic is that they don't need an event to fundraise. And event fundraising is very costly and doesn't have good ROI. So now a lot of organizations are being forced to really fundraise, which is having a great result. So you can virtually fundraise in almost the same way as you can in person. So don't be afraid to ask. Let's see. How can we leverage peer-to-peer fundraising during this time? So I think that donor advocacy or peer-to-peer fundraising is really important now more than ever. Donors are looking for ways to be generous, and one of the ways that we can find out who to be generous to is by hearing about that from another person who donates to that nonprofit. A lot of places with referrals and, so one of the ways we can help is by amplifying voices, right? So I think going out there to your base of people who like to raise money on your behalf and saying, hey, could you amplify our voice? Can you share this? Can you tell them why you give to our organization? I think that is one of the best ways to do that. And so I highly encourage your advocates, those of you who are involved to peer-to-peer fundraise on your behalf, because there's no better reference than a person who gives and gives happily. So that's a really good one. Anonymous says, our community, in all caps, loves to have frigging events. How can we train the community that alternate ways to be generous is a good thing? Well, I think the pandemic has gotten a good start on you. I can't imagine any nonprofit right now having large in-person events because they're dangerous. And how are you going to eat and drink through a mask? So the whole point of philanthropy and fundraising, none of that relies on having an event to do it. And there are organizations that raise hundreds of millions of dollars and never have a fundraising event. Imagine that, right? And we also know that event attendees aren't necessarily donors. So one of the things we want to focus on is that the pandemic has allowed us to strip down, maybe I shouldn't say strip down, to get to the core of what matters the most to people: family, causes, beliefs, all of those things. And all an event does is distract from that core. So during a pandemic, and one of the things that the pandemic has shown us is what really matters. And what really matters is the work that your mission does. And so fundraising is about supporting that work, right? And so I really want you to think about that as well for your organization, is that events distract from the work and good fundraising is additive. So someone says, I'm facing major stress from this pandemic between work from home, kids, family, etc. Help. Okay. So I completely hear you, and I can't imagine what you're facing. Like I said, we're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. Um, you are probably doing heroic things that some of us don't have to deal with. But where all of our coping starts with is with ourselves. So I want to encourage you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, to lean into that, to do some massive self-care. And self-care can look like all kinds of things. It can literally look like not taking a shower and laying on the couch for a day. It can look like deciding that you're going to have a Zoom-free Friday. And this Friday would be a perfect time to do some self-care, but also help celebrate Juneteenth. You could, but you need to lean into yourself. You're not working from home. You're working during a pandemic. You're taking care of your kids during a pandemic. You're monitoring your health during a pandemic. And frankly, we have scattered leadership. We don't know what's true. Every day changes. So it's very unsettling. So first, I want you to give yourself some of the grace and kindness you're probably giving to other people. You want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating well, those kinds of things, you may want to talk to some friends. You may want to talk to a professional. Every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I see my doctor. I love my doctor. He and I do Zoom calls and phone calls. And I have to tell you that it is very helpful for me to maintain my mental health, to talk to a third-party neutral person that I can just rage on. I mean, I literally, like 3 weeks ago, just totally exploded on him about something that now seems like such a small thing to me. But also get the help you need, and make sure that it's okay. It's completely okay. You cannot do it all. And I love that people think they can do it all, but they can't. And so maybe it's time, you know, for me, the news can be a trigger. So I have to disconnect from the news sometimes because it upsets me. Or social media, sometimes I'm like, oh, for Pete's sake, really? And so find what makes you happy and lean into some of those things. And the work will be here tomorrow. So one of the nice things about the work that we do is, in fundraising, if we don't do the work, or if something happens, nobody dies. And you need to really take care of yourself. And I think it's really big of you to admit and be vulnerable and say, look, I'm struggle bussing it. You know, some days you're driving the struggle bus and some days you're the passenger. And so the first thing is, you know, knowing that you're dealing with an issue. So again, you know, sometimes you got to lean out of your work and lean into yourself, and that's totes okay. So you were run over by the struggle bus. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you've got tire tracks on your back, but I bet that you are stronger than you know. You are more resilient than you know. And if you only give yourself the grace and the compassion that you're giving other people, you might be kinder to yourself this time. So just something to think about. Yeah. And also know that your community sees you and appreciates you. So lean into your friends, you know, take a walk. You know, for me, I had to get out of my environment. I travel 300 nights a year and I've been home straight since March 13th. I haven't left my house. I've gotten grocery deliveries. I literally have not gone outside much because I live in downtown Austin and it's not very safe, and a whole host of reasons. So this past Friday, I went and checked into a hotel and spent the night there and swam in their pool. I missed swimming in a pool. And so I just swam. I spent the whole day in the pool, just lounging. I may have had some adult beverages, but I needed to get in the water. And so, you know, you got to do the things that you can. But also remember, work isn't everything. So take some time, take a day off. Good Lord, take an afternoon off. Just, yeah. And take time away from the camera. I have to tell you that. So take time away from the camera. Some ideas on virtual donor benefits that replace things such as tickets and tables to events, invitations to coffee, appreciation lunches. I think talking about those donors and telling their stories on the web, I think posting about them on social media, you know, those opportunities we have to tell the donor story are sometimes even better than what you had the in-person things. You know, a lot of us are moving away from, if we're having virtual events, we're moving away from auctions. We know that auctions are a trigger word for a lot of our people of color, and we don't want to be supporting a nonprofit that has an auction, because the word auction itself comes laden with so much. So thinking about other resources and other ways that we can be better. But I think telling the donor story, posting their information, things like that are simple things. You know, putting up a slide on your website, whatever you want to do. But also, again, for donors, most of it's pretty simple. Tell me what you did with my money and thank me. It's really, you know, we are the ones that are overcomplicating it, and we don't have to. So again, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. Keep yourself grounded and your organization grounded in gratitude, reality, and outcomes. So again, impact, gratitude, and reality. Are there any free alternatives to ThankView that I recommend? Yeah, you can record a video on your phone and then email it as an attachment or upload it to YouTube and send it to the donor. You can certainly do that. Some of the lower priced alternatives are almost worse than doing it yourself. So I think that's a great idea for you to do. You can also, you know, send them a text with a video, send them to an Instagram post that has a video. There's lots of ways to get video in donors' hands if you can't afford a platform to do that. So we are out of time. That is my contact information. I actually answer my emails, especially now that I'm home. And I want to thank Amy and the folks, oh, there she is, for inviting me back. I am always happy to spend time with this group. So any way I can help you, just let me know.
And Lynn, thank you so much for your time today. We always love hearing your wisdom. You obviously found your passion and you're so good at what you do. You'll send us we'll get the recording. Yep. And then I highly recommend you guys following Lynn on social media. Check out her website, Incarnate Word Academy. We subscribe to her website series. The one that she had this week was incredible. I got some amazing ideas for writing great thank you letters and emails to our donors. And we hope to have you back to speak personally with us again soon. Hopefully in the future in person again and not on Zoom, but hey, Zoom worked pretty good today.
Zoom doesn't fail you sometimes, so I'm there. But I'd love to drive down. I'd love to drive down to the coast, so that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, we hope to have you soon. And thank you everybody for joining us. I know you're going to leave here with some information you can use, and we look forward to seeing everyone again, and stay healthy and stay safe.
Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Bye, Lynn.
Bye.